This conference will now be recorded.
We are streaming and we're live. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Today is April 9th, 2021, and it is 2:03 p.m. And this is the Physician Assistant Policy Committee meeting. This is being broadcast publicly on the State Medical Board of Ohio's YouTube channel as well. I will now call roll. Scott Cackler.
Present.
Dr. Mehta. Karen Conger. Dr. Feibel.
Here.
Dr. Engel.
Present.
Kent Kula.
Present.
The minutes from the last meeting of this committee held on January 8th have been sent to you for review and comment. Hopefully you had a chance to review those. Unless there's any questions or concerns, could I please get a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting on January the 8th?
Scott, I'll make a motion.
Get a second, please.
Motion second.
Thank you. The motions for the meeting minutes stand approved.
Could we get a quick voiceover on that?
Vote.
Voice vote.
So all in favor?
All those who aye.
Aye.
There you go. That'll
Opposed?
do it. Thank you.
Okay. For a legislative update, our legislative director is not available today, but I did want you to know that the legislature has been on recess over this past week and should resume next week. On April 14th, the Senate Finance Committee will begin hearings on the state budget, and those hearings will be done with the governor's office, the OBM director. The medical board will be giving testimony on its budget. It'll be before the Senate Health Committee, and that'll be in the next couple of weeks. There's a couple of bills of interest to the medical board in general. One continuing is House Bill 122, which is telehealth. And the telehealth bill was passed out of the House before they left on recess. Now it will be assigned in the Senate to a committee to continue the Senate hearing process. And the medical board legislative staff is still working with the legislature and stakeholders to address the concerns regarding the inclusion of guardrails based on the telehealth ad hoc committee that the medical board had. So that's something that we'll continue to keep you updated on. The other bill that's of continuing interest to the medical board and to our licensees is the occupational licensing bill, which is Senate Bill 131 and House Bill 203. And the bills were both introduced that would require an occupational licensing authority to issue a license or a government certification to an applicant that holds a license or work experience in another state. So both bills are very similar. The language is nearly identical to language that was put through the legislature last year. And that's something that we're currently looking at with our legal team to analyze the impact of this language on our licensees. Are there any questions regarding the legislative update before we move forward?
Yep.
Recently, you were sent 4 documents in email that I sent out regarding rules and rule updates so that you could take a look at them before this committee hearing. These documents included light-based medical device rules, consult agreement rules, and rules pending at CSI, as well as a chart of all the listing pending medical board rules. Kim Anderson, our chief legal counsel for the medical board, will now provide an update.
Thank you, Jill. Good afternoon. There's been quite a bit of movement this week on some of these rules. This is good timing that we're talking about this. I believe that you had information regarding House Bill 442, which impacts, among other things, cosmetic therapist licensure, which has a direct impact on the light-based medical device rules. So we did receive authority from the governor and filed an emergency rule today regarding light-based medical devices for laser hair removal. And so that was filed today. It allows physicians to delegate laser hair removal to cosmetic therapists who were licensed by the board as of April 11th, 2021. On April 12th, 2021, their licensure goes away. That was a really old rule, and so we did make a tiny tweak with respect to PAs because it still referenced a supplemental services plan for PAs, and so we took out that language and just put in, the standard language of operating under a supervision agreement. So that rule becomes effective today, and it will expire on August 8th. So really no impact for PAs there, but just to let you know that was filed for allowing cosmetic therapists to continue. In addition, we've been working for quite some time on the permanent rules for light-based medical devices. And we did, you have a really lengthy memo from me that explains all the changes that we made. The board reviewed all of the comments from PAPC along with other entities and made a number of changes to the draft rules. Those were released from CSI on Monday, this past Monday. And because of our concern with the expiration of the emergency rule, I did file those rules today as well. So they will have a public hearing on May 17th. If you look at those and have any comments, please let me know. And we will make sure that those are addressed. It will go through the regular JCAR process with a public hearing and then a JCAR meeting as well. There are 4 rules in that package. So that's kind of my update on those rules. I don't know if I can stop here, and if you have any questions, now would be a good time on that rule package.
Sure. At the bottom of the memo, that's the new updated language.
Yes, and I believe they're attached as well. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I know you referred to it with the emergency clause, the removal of any reference back to the previous essays that had stuff listed. But for example, in the new, if you look at 4731, 18, 3, B5A. Mm-hmm. Sorry, if you followed all along those. And there's multiple other areas there where it references back to the essay. The last 3 words there, and I don't think this is the intent, but it almost seems like it's going back to the old version of the essay. The words authorizing the service when I read it, makes it sound like authorizing the service needs to be listed in the essay, not just referring to within the scope of the physician's practice. Does that make sense?
Okay. So you would recommend removing those words?
Yeah, just referring back to the essay. Those 3 words are the ones that kind of makes it seem like the essay authorizes the service. But the essay is more referencing the practice of the physician.
Where are you?
So let's look at 4731, 18.3, B5A.
B5B.
4718, 4731-18-03.
Yes.
So if you're looking at the memo, it's page 7. (5A), where it's talking about delegation. And A says a physician assistant license under 4730 of the revised code with whom the physician has an effective supervision agreement authorizing the service. I think just the words authorizing the service, that line is in there 3 or 4 times in this memo. I don't think the intent was to make the supervision agreement more by listing each individual service. Like, do you want them in the supervision agreement to put light-based therapy? Or I think it's just globally referring back to that's in the scope of the physician's practice.
Mm-hmm.
But where it says authorizing the service, I don't know if that's needed, because that could make it sound like we're going back to listing out every single thing we're doing in that SA versus the scope of the physician's practice. Does that make sense? And maybe you don't interpret it that way. That's how I read it.
Okay. Yeah,
Is the intent of that?
I don't think we were interpreting it to be anything different, but that, the physician was comfortable with the PA's training and education.
Yeah, I can agree too. I don't see it as measuring or mentioning a specific service. I know I agree with you, Scott. It's repeated, but it seems to me that it's just as it's covered under the agreement for that particular service. So, and it doesn't seem problematic to me.
Okay.
So the intent of that is not to list that as a service, correct? In other words, the physician assistant would not have to, the supervising physician would not have to say, this is a service that I authorize under the supervising agreement. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. What we don't want is them to, in the SA, that just says you can do what I delegate to you. We don't want it to add the specifics of every single thing they're delegating to you, right? Because that's where we were years ago, and they got very cumbersome. And I don't think that was the intent of this language, but when I read it, that's kind of like, wait, are we going back for just the word that service, because it refers to that service. So do you want us to list that service on the SA? Because there's not a spot on the standard SAs that are posted on the medical board website.
So is this easily changeable, Kim, or not?
Yeah, we cannot make any changes to the emergency rule. And I think that's fine. But because the language that was in there was super old. But yeah, if you make that suggestion, to remove that language, where it shows up, that's something, it'd be really helpful for me if you could send me like an email or something that would say that. But absolutely, we can take that, and because we are, in the process now, these rules are filed and we're taking more comments. So yeah, if you provide that to me now, I'll make sure that it's part of the public hearing that we have on May 17th.
Do we want to modify that, or do we want to remove it, Scott? Are you mentioning removing it, or?
I just think those 3 words, like.
I think it should be modified just to make sure, since it is light-based therapy, that to say something in there that's not part of the supervisory agreement, but something to the effect that the supervising physician feels that the physician assistant has the appropriate training and skill level to do this, or something along those lines, just to verify, since it is something that not all physician assistants are trained to do, so to speak. It just clarifies that the supervisory physician needs to make sure that there's adequate training. I think it's inherent, but I think that might make people feel better.
Yeah, I think that's inherent. I agree, but I think
Yeah,
that's
do you
inherent. I
think
just want to
that
make sure that people don't feel like they have to now recreate essays to list out light-based therapy, specifically calling it out.
I agree with that, but I do think that people might feel more comfortable if they know that the physician at least has read this and says that there has to be adequate training, given it's something that I wouldn't know how to do as a physician, so I wouldn't do it, obviously. So, and I think some of that's inherent, but I think just to protect the idea, if it ever comes before the board, it'd be nice to have that language in there to say, well, that was your job to make sure, and it was very clear in the
Right.
rule.
I think that's in there because we reference the statute
Yes.
that requires the physician to do that. 4730.21 is referenced multiple times.
Yes.
Okay.
Does everyone feel comfortable with that?
Yes.
Because we
I think
took
that's
away
right.
the specific education and training requirements that the other license types have, because the physician is already required to do that under 4730.21.
Yeah, I thought that was clear. I was just making sure that we weren't adjusting the essay.
There was
because
no
that's already
intent
clear.
to do that. There was no intent to add to the supervision agreement. The intent was just to have it, be the way it is now. But it is allowing PAs to do something different that they haven't been able to do with the non-ablative lasers. So, if you want to, it would be super helpful if you could just shoot me an email, and then I'll make sure that we add that to our public rules hearing, and it will be included, and then it will come to the full board as well. Thank you. Are there any other questions or things that you saw? Okay, thanks. I know you've seen these multiple times, so definitely appreciate your feedback along the way on these. All right, I think the next thing we have is consult rules. The statute changed in December to allow physician assistants to enter into consult agreements with pharmacists. So we had rules for physicians that like the ink is barely dry on those. And they were filed in December of 2020. And so we basically have taken those rules and just inserted the new language, which is practitioners, so that physician assistants and nurse practitioners are able to enter into this. And then the pharmacy board has updated rules, and the nursing board will have rules as well. So we have looked at the nursing board rules, and ours do match up with their rules. So I didn't know if you had any concerns with those rules. If that's even it, I know kind of from the pandemic, I think physician assistants were able to do this kind of on an emergency basis, and then this law changed to make it permanent.
No, I think you made it very clear. So
okay, good. Thank you. All right. So we will be taking those to the board next week to review the nursing board rules. So because we are different agencies working together on rules that kind of need to be the same, we all have a duty to consult with each other. So the nursing board had a duty to consult with us on them. And so we'll be doing that as well at the board meeting next week. And then after that, we'll plan to file with the Common Sense Initiative and see what comments we get on those. I will say, when we did this for physicians, we received over 300 comments from physicians. We made multiple changes, and I think we're in a good place now with what these rules look like and what the pharmacy board rules look like. So hopefully, they will go through fairly quickly. So then the next group that I have, if there's no questions on the consult agreements, is the rules that are currently pending at CSI. So those are just rules that are up for our 5-year rule review. And it includes our sexual misconduct rules and our delegation to unlicensed practitioners, as well as the pronouncement of death rule and prescribing to family members and self. And so minimal changes to those rules. We did receive one comment from the Board of Nursing about the pronouncement of death rule, just to clarify how we're referring to nursing licensure, that it should be a license instead of a certificate. So we'll take that to the board for an amendment. But other than that, we have not received any comments on these rules. All right. So if you think of anything later, let us know. But we'll move forward with the board to amend that one rule, and then when they're released from CSI, we'll file those with JCAR. And then the last thing you have is just kind of our overall spreadsheet of changes that we need to make to rules for this year. So we have a number for the 5-year rule review, which are in progress. Then you can also see we have a number of rules that have changed because of legislation. House Bill 442 did require a number of changes. So we are looking at that as we move through the year. So any questions on those? All right. I think that concludes everything that I have on rules. So thank you very much for your feedback.
Thanks, Kim. This was a well-timed committee meeting. The fact that executive order and everything got signed today. I will, after we get off here, send you a copy of the executive order on the cosmetology and the laser lights. Light-based devices. And then in the meantime, if you're interested in watching or participating in the hearing, the public hearing that's coming up on those rules, let me know and I will get you a link to attend or watch that as well, if that's something you're interested in. I also want to let you know that Bryson Hatfield, who's here in spirit, I see his age up at the top, recently joined the medical board as an administrative assistant, so you should be hearing from him in the future. And I think we're happy to have him on board, and he will be a great addition to our team. So when you hear from him, you'll know he's coming from our office. Unless anyone has anything else to discuss or any other questions, the next meeting of the Physician Assistant Policy Committee will be held on July 9th. Which sounds like that's a long way away. I'm hoping that we're all back into a little bit of normal society by the time we get to that point. As always, in the meantime, if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone else on the medical board staff. Unless there's any other business to come before this committee, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion, Kendra Engel.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No nays. I think everyone wants to conclude.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Okay, that's it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank you.